I used to think that planning a wedding was supposed to be the most stressful, nerve-wracking thing in the world, but for me, in those first few weeks, it felt more like living inside a dream. Everything seemed golden, literally golden-like. The way sunlight poured through the thin curtains in the mornings, hitting the white fabric of my wedding dress where it hung. I'd catch myself staring at it sometimes, half smiling, half terrified. That dress wasn't just fabric. It was a promise. A promise that, for once, I would be surrounded by the people I loved the most, celebrating something that was actually about me. That I wanted my wedding to be more than a ceremony. I wanted it to be the moment where my family and I finally felt close. Again, years of distance, both physical and emotional, had kept us apart. But now, I had a chance to bring everyone under one roof, to finally bridge that gap. I remember saying it out loud one evening while looking at the printed plane tickets spread across my coffee table. This is going to be worth it. $50,000. That's how much it took to make that dream a reality. I don't even say the number lightly because it still makes my stomach tighten. I worked double shifts, gave up vacations, cut corners in every possible way to make that money stretch into something meaningful. Every saved penny, every canceled dinner out, every late night at work, it all went into this moment. Into bringing them here. Into making sure there were no excuses. And honestly, I didn't even resent it. That's the funny part. I didn't feel the sting of sacrifice. Instead, I felt proud. Proud that I could do something big enough, meaningful enough, to prove, maybe to them, but definitely to myself, that I mattered. That this wedding wasn't just about me marrying the person I love, but about reconnecting with the people who raised me, shaped me, and, in some twisted way, kept me chasing their approval for most of my life. In my head, I could already see it. The moment they'd step off the plane, maybe looking tired from the flight, but smiling, pulling me into their arms. My dad would probably make some sarcastic comment about the chaos of airports. My mom would fuss over my hair, probably say I looked too thin, and then cry anyway because her baby was getting married. My siblings would laugh, tease me, maybe even make fun of the suit, but it wouldn't matter, because they'd be there. That's all I wanted, for them to be there. I used to sit at night, staring at my phone after wiring another chunk of money for flights and hotels, and I'd tell myself, this is family. This is worth every cent. My partner would watch me, sometimes with that half-worried, half-gentle look, but I brushed it off. I told them, you don't get it. Family is everything. And I believed it. God, I believed it so much. The funny thing about money is that it always carries the weight of the choices you didn't make. Every dollar I saved for that wedding was a dollar I didn't spend on myself. I skipped trips I wanted to take, passed on little luxuries, said no to things that might have made life easier or more fun. I remember standing in a store once, holding a pair of shoes I'd wanted for months, staring at the price tag, and thinking, that's 2 days of food for mom and dad when they visit. Put it back. So I did, over and over again. That became the pattern. Put it back, walk away, save it for family. I took on extra shifts, stayed late when I was already exhausted, and convinced myself that it was just temporary. Every time my body ached or my eyes burned from staring at a screen too long, I told myself the same story, that it would all be worth it when my family walked into that wedding venue and I saw their faces. That vision kept me going. It was like a carrot dangling in front of me, pulling me forward. There were nights when I'd collapse on the couch after work, still in uniform, and imagine the laughter around the dinner table once they arrived. I'd picture my siblings leaning in close, catching up like no time had passed. I'd hear my mom's voice asking about the food, probably criticizing the choices, but eating it anyway. And my dad, well, even his dry humor would have been comforting. These little imagined scenes became my fuel. I told myself it was okay to sacrifice because this was more than a party. This was about proving something, that I could give my family something unforgettable, that I could erase the miles and the years that had separated us. Maybe, deep down, I was trying to buy closeness, trying to force togetherness with money. And yet, I didn't question it. I just kept saving, kept giving, kept believing that if I poured enough of myself into this, it would finally matter. That I would finally matter. Sometimes my partner would gently ask if it was too much, if maybe I was overdoing it. They'd look at me with this expression that mixed concern with love, and I'd laugh it off. I'd tell them, no, this is what family deserves. They've given me everything. Now it's my turn. But late at night, when I was alone, there were moments I wondered if I was giving too much, if I was burning myself out for something that maybe didn't exist the way I thought it did. I'd silence that thought quickly, bury it deep, because hope is easier to carry than doubt. And so, I kept going. One sacrifice at a time. One dream closer to what I thought would finally feel like belonging. At first, everything seemed fine. The group chat with my family was buzzing with excitement, little updates about what they'd pack, what they were most looking forward to. My mom even sent me a picture of the dress she was thinking of wearing, and my brother joked about how he was going to tear up the dance floor. I remember smiling so wide my cheeks hurt, reading those messages, thinking, this is it, it's really happening. But then, slowly, things shifted. The replies became shorter, the enthusiasm faded, and the silence started stretching longer between each message. At first, I brushed it off. People get busy, right? They had jobs, lives, their own stresses. I told myself not to be paranoid. But then I'd notice things, like how a question I asked would go unanswered for days, or how calls I made would go straight to voicemail. I'd send a follow-up message and see that it had been read, but no one bothered to reply. There's this particular sting in seeing those two little words, seen. It's like a slap without the sound that I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was nothing. Maybe they were overwhelmed with travel plans. Maybe they were just tired. But late at night, when the world was quiet, I couldn't ignore that unease. Creeping in, I'd stare at my phone screen, waiting for it to light up, waiting for a sign of reassurance that they were still just as excited as I was. It rarely came, and when it did, the tone felt off, like their hearts weren't really in it anymore. There was one evening I still can't forget. I was sitting on the couch with my partner, scrolling through the old messages, trying to remember what it felt like when the chat was alive with excitement. My partner glanced at me and asked gently, "Why does it feel like they're pulling away?" And I snapped back with a laugh. Too sharp, too defensive. They're not. They're just busy. It's fine. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew it wasn't fine. It's strange how silence can feel louder than words. The lack of replies, the delayed calls, the excuses that didn't quite add up, it all started to sound like static in my head. And yet, I kept telling myself the same thing over and over. They'll be here. They'll come. They have to. The truth didn't hit me all at once. It wasn't some dramatic phone call or a carefully worded confession. No, it came quietly, like a knife slipping between my ribs when I wasn't looking. I remember scrolling through my phone one evening, half distracted, trying to convince myself that the silence from my family didn't mean anything. And then there it was. A photo. My sister, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, grinning ear to ear, champagne glass in hand. The caption read something like, "Europe has my heart." My first reaction wasn't even anger. It was confusion. My brain couldn't process it. I stared at that photo so long my screen dimmed, and when it lit up again, it felt like the world tilted. I scrolled more, my fingers numb. Post after post. My parents in Rome, tossing coins into the Trevi fountain. My brother in Barcelona, arms wide on some rooftop bar. They were all there, together, living it up on what looked like the trip of a lifetime. The trip I had unknowingly paid for. That I remember dropping my phone onto the couch and just sitting there, hands pressed against my mouth, as if holding myself together physically could stop me from unraveling. My chest was tight, my ears buzzing. I think I whispered out loud, "No, no, this can't be real." But the photos kept coming. Different angles, different days, the kind of posts that screamed joy, while I sat thousands of miles away, wondering why my own wedding wasn't enough. To bring them here. My partner walked into the room, saw my face, and asked what was wrong. I couldn't even explain it at first. I just handed over the phone, let them scroll through the feed themselves. Watching their expression shift from confusion to horror was like confirmation of what I already feared. I wasn't overreacting. This was real. My family had taken the money I'd scraped together, the money meant to bring us closer, and they'd spent it on themselves. On Europe, the betrayal didn't come with shouting or tears at first. It came with silence. A cold, heavy silence that settled over me like a blanket I couldn't shake off. I felt sick, my stomach churning with a mix of disbelief and rage. I wanted to scream, to call them right then and there, but I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much to dial. All I could think was, how could they? How could they choose a vacation over me? Over my wedding? over everything I gave up for them. And the worst part, the part that still burns when I think about it, is that they looked so happy. Happier than I had ever seen them in years. As if my sacrifice wasn't even a thought in their minds. As if I didn't even exist. The anger didn't hit me right away. At first, it was just this hollow, gut-wrenching emptiness, like the bottom had fallen out of my chest. I sat there on the edge of my bed, phone beside me, staring at nothing. My body felt heavy, like I'd been filled with wet sand, every breath. An effort. I kept replaying it in my head. The years of saving, the nights I went without, the way I'd imagined them stepping off the plane. It all twisted inside me until the picture became unbearable. I'd clench my fists, unclench them, and then clench them again, trying to bleed out the pressure I felt rising inside. Eventually, the emotions broke through in waves. First came disbelief, muttered words into the silence of my room. This isn't real. They wouldn't do this to me. They wouldn't. Then came the questions that cut deeper than the betrayal itself. Was I really that disposable? Was I just a bank account to them? Did they ever even plan on coming? Each question felt like slamming my head against a wall I couldn't break through. I cried. But it wasn't the soft kind of crying that releases you. It was sharp, ugly, raw. The kind that leaves you gasping for air, the kind where your own reflection in the mirror looks like a stranger. My partner tried to hold me, whispered that I didn't deserve this, that I had given too much already, but their words couldn't reach me. I was trapped inside my own head, spiraling, replaying every memory of sacrifice and every moment I had believed family meant everything. My thoughts grew bitter, sarcastic even. I remember saying out loud, "Guess Europe was more romantic then. Watching me get married, huh?" And then laughing, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I was going to break apart completely. That twisted humor became a shield, thin as paper, but the only thing keeping me from drowning. In the hurt, the physical toll was just as brutal. My chest was tight, like something heavy was pressing down on me. My hands shook. My eyes burned, swollen from crying but refusing to stop. I paced the apartment for hours, back and forth, like moving might make the pain loosen. Its grip. It didn't. The night bled into morning, the sun rising while I sat curled up on the couch, numb, drained, empty. Somewhere in that haze, one thought kept circling back. I gave them everything, and they gave me nothing. The morning of my wedding felt nothing like I had imagined. I woke up to silence instead of the chaotic warmth I'd pictured. No frantic calls from my mom asking if I'd eaten, no teasing messages from my siblings about whether I was going to trip walking down the aisle. Just quiet. Too quiet. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at my suit hanging by the window, sunlight spilling across the fabric. It should have felt like the happiest day of my life. Instead, there was this hollow pit in my stomach that no amount of deep breaths could fill. I went through the motions because I had to. The makeup artist came, the photographer snapped candid shots, friends buzzed around trying to keep the energy alive. I smiled, nodded, even laughed when I needed to, but it all felt like acting. My body was there, but my heart was somewhere else, still staring at those photos of my family clinking glasses in Europe. The thought clung to me like a stain I couldn't scrub out. They chose a vacation over me. Walking down the aisle should have been this cinematic moment, the kind people dream about. And yes, there was music, there were flowers, there were faces lit up with joy, but all I saw were the empty chairs I had reserved for my family. Every glance at them was a knife twist, a reminder that I had carved out space in my life for people who didn't show up. I felt exposed, like everyone could see it, like the whole room knew that my own blood had abandoned me. During the vows, I tried to focus on my partner, their eyes steady, voice trembling with love. For a moment, that pulled me back, reminded me of why we were there. And yet, even in that tenderness, part of me was screaming inside. This isn't how it was supposed to be. They were supposed to be here. They were supposed to see this. The reception, I laughed when friends made speeches, danced when the music played, and clinked glasses when people toasted. I did all the things you're supposed to do at a wedding. But it all felt muted, like someone had turned the volume down. On the joy, I couldn't stop picturing what the night might have been like if my family had been at those tables, raising their glasses with everyone else. Instead, they were thousands of miles away, sipping wine in some European cafe, probably not even thinking of me. That night, When the last guest left and the music faded, I slipped off my shoes and sat alone in the empty hall for a moment. My partner was outside saying goodbye to friends, and for the first time that day, I let my smile drop. The silence echoed, the chairs stood abandoned, and I whispered to myself, I gave them everything, and they couldn't even give me this. In the days after the wedding, I carried the silence like a weight I couldn't shake. People would ask me how it felt, if everything had gone the way I wanted, and I'd force a smile, nod, say all the polite things. But inside, my chest burned with the question I couldn't let go of, why? Why wasn't I enough? Eventually, the anger pushed through the grief, and I knew I couldn't just sit with it anymore. I needed answers. I called them, over and over. At first, no one picked up. Straight to voicemail, as if the universe wanted me to stew in my own fury a little longer. Finally, my mother answered. Her voice was casual, almost cheerful, like nothing was wrong. Hello, she said, as if she hadn't just missed her child's wedding. The rage that had been simmering inside me boiled over in a rush. I asked her why. Why they weren't there, why they chose Europe, why they thought it was okay to take everything I had worked for and turn it into a vacation. Her tone shifted instantly, defensive, clipped. We needed this trip. We deserved it. And honestly, you shouldn't make us feel guilty for doing something for ourselves. I remember the way her words echoed in my ears, like she was miles away but shouting directly into my chest. I couldn't believe it. No apology, no regret, just excuses. My father chimed in at one point, his voice sharp, tired. You worry too much about appearances. It's just a wedding. You'll have a long marriage ahead of you. Why make such a fuss about one day? One day? That's what he called it. As if it wasn't supposed to be the most important day of my life. As if it wasn't the moment I had bled myself dry to make possible. I tried to explain, tried to tell them how much I had given up, how hard I had worked just to bring them close again. But the more I spoke, the colder they became. My siblings even laughed, actually laughed, when I asked if they understood how deeply this cut me. One of them muttered, Relax, you're overreacting. You're married, aren't you? Isn't that what matters? That was the moment something inside me cracked. I realized I wasn't going to get the apology I craved, the acknowledgement I deserved. They weren't going to see me, not really. To them, I was just the ATM that happened to have emotions attached. And in that moment, hearing their dismissive tones, I felt the last thread of hope snap. I ended the call before they could hang up on me. My hands were trembling, my throat raw from holding back screams. For the first time in my life, I let myself admit it out loud. My family doesn't value me. They never have. And as brutal as that realization was, it was also the beginning of something else. The beginning of distance. After that call, the silence between us wasn't just absence. It was a wall. A thick, cold wall I couldn't climb, no matter how badly I wanted to. At first, I still checked my phone obsessively, half expecting some kind of apology, a message, anything to show they cared. But nothing came. No texts. No calls. Just the occasional vacation photo still lingering on their feeds, like salt on an open wound. They had moved on, and I was left in the ruins of everything I had sacrificed. The days after the wedding blurred together. I went through life on autopilot, showing up at work, smiling at neighbors, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was unraveling. Every small reminder cut deep. The empty chairs at the reception replayed in my mind like a loop. The smell of the flowers still sitting in a vase felt almost mocking. Even laughter felt strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how people who raised me could turn their backs so easily. My mind wandered into old memories, my childhood bedroom, the feeling of sitting at the dinner table while everyone else's voices drowned me out, the way I was always the one to give in, to bend, to make peace. Suddenly, this betrayal didn't feel new. It felt like the grand finale of a pattern I had been too blind, or maybe too hopeful, to see. Point one memory came back sharper than the rest. I was maybe 12, and my dad had promised to come to my school recital. I scanned the crowd the whole time, waiting for his face, waiting for that little nod of approval. He never showed. When I got home, he brushed it off. I was busy. Don't be dramatic. I had swallowed the disappointment then, told myself it didn't matter. But lying in bed after the wedding, I realized I had been swallowing that same disappointment my whole life. This was just the grown-up version of the same story that my partner tried to remind me I wasn't alone, that I still had love, still had a future. And I clung to that, even when it felt like I was drowning. But grief is heavy. It isn't just sadness. It's betrayal, shame, loneliness, and anger all tangled together. I caught myself thinking things I didn't want to admit out loud. Like maybe I should have known better. Maybe I was a fool for expecting them to change. Maybe love wasn't enough to make them stay. And yet, underneath all of it, a small shift was beginning. For the first time, I started to wonder if I needed to stop chasing them. If maybe, just maybe, letting go was the only way to stop the bleeding. Healing didn't come in some grand, cinematic moment. There was no sunrise where I woke up magically lighter, no sudden wave of forgiveness that washed it all away. It came, slowly, almost painfully so, in little, uneven steps that sometimes felt like progress and other times felt like I was dragging myself through quicksand. But still, I kept moving. I started small. Cooking dinner with my partner, laughing at how we burned the first attempt, but ate it anyway. Sitting on the couch together with no phones, just silence, and realizing that silence with them didn't feel empty the way it did with my family. It felt safe. Safe was new for me. I didn't know how much I had been craving it until I finally had it. There were mornings I'd wake up and my chest wouldn't feel so heavy. I'd walk into the kitchen, sunlight streaming across the counter, and for a fleeting moment, I wouldn't think about the betrayal. Instead, I'd think about the warmth of the coffee mug in my hands, the smell of toast in the air, my partner humming to themselves. Those tiny, ordinary details became lifelines, pulling me back into a world that felt real, one that didn't revolve around disappointment. And yet, the pain still lingered. Some nights I'd catch myself scrolling through old family photos, wondering if things could have been different. I'd stare at my younger self, that kid who always wanted to be seen, and whisper, "I'm sorry they never showed up for you." It felt strange, grieving people who were still alive, but that's what it was. Grief. A slow, quiet death of expectations. The turning point came when I realized I didn't have to fill those empty chairs with blood relatives. I started noticing the people who had been there all along. Friends who showed up without being asked, in-laws who treated me like their own, even coworkers who took time to check in. These weren't just people on the sidelines. They were my chosen family. And little by little, I let them in. I won't pretend it was easy. Some days, the bitterness crept back, whispering that I'd been a fool, that no one could be trusted. But then I'd see my partner's face or feel the warmth of a friend's hug, and I'd remind myself, not everyone leaves. Not everyone betrays. Love is still here. Healing wasn't about forgetting what my family did. It was about shifting my gaze. Instead of staring at the emptiness they left behind, I started noticing the fullness in front of me. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, that shift began to stitch me back together. It's strange, looking back now. For the longest time, I thought closure would come from them, from my family finally admitting they were wrong, finally saying the words I needed to hear. But those words never came, and somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for them. Closure didn't arrive in a neat package from the people who hurt me. It came from me deciding I was done bleeding for their approval. Oh, I still feel the sting sometimes? Of course. I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hurt when holidays roll around and my phone stays quiet, or when I see other people's families showing up for them in ways mine never did. But now, instead of letting that wound define me, I let it remind me of what I deserve and what I refuse to accept anymore. When I think about my wedding day now, I don't just see the empty chairs. I see my partner's face, glowing with love. I see friends dancing until their feet ached, people who showed up for me simply because they cared. I see laughter, joy, and a new family forming in the spaces my old one left behind. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of, but maybe it was the wedding I needed. A mirror held up to the truth, forcing me to see where my love should really go, that there's a freedom in letting go. It doesn't mean the pain disappears, but it means it doesn't control me anymore. My family chose Europe over me. That's a fact I can't change. But I can choose differently. I can choose the people who choose me back. I can choose to stop begging for scraps of love and instead build a life overflowing with the kind of care I once thought I had to buy. If you asked me now whether I regret spending that money, I'd hesitate. On the surface, yes, 50,000. Dollars gone, no family in sight. But in another way, that money bought me clarity. It bought me the harsh, painful truth I had been avoiding for years. And in that truth, I found something far more valuable than their presence at my wedding. I found myself, so no, I don't regret it. Because sometimes you need to lose everything you thought you wanted to realize you already had everything you needed.